And we are live on Facebook. Hello, Facebook world. I am going to share my screen and we're going to start. Okay. Let's start by just taking a breath. All right. We've been through so much. We really have. And I know a lot of people feel helpless and tired and hopeless but still outraged and still wanting to do something. And that's why I have decided to put together this educational series called Plan for Peace, a guide to making a peaceful impact. I think we can all understand why now is imperative for us to make sure all the change that we're seeking out is done through peaceful means only. And through this, we're going to explore all the different aspects of peaceful but impactful and lasting protests. So a little about me. I would call myself a protest veteran. My apologies if that is an offensive term to anyone, but essentially it means I've done this before. Why? Well, I'm also a Michigander, so I love the hand behind me, the peace hands. Being from Michigan, I do believe in symbolism of hands a lot. But I'm a lifelong Unitarian Universalist, and I am a very proud UU, as we're called. And I truly, deeply believe in our principles, and all of our 7 principles are rooted in not only peace, but in justice and getting justice through peaceful means. Those who do know me know I am an organizer at heart, and I have organized a whole lot of things. And many of those things, I'm your friendly neighborhood candidate. I've run for office several times, unfortunately unsuccessfully, in some very, very tough districts. But despite every time I get knocked down, I get back up again, just like the great prophets Chumbawamba, told us to do. That's a joke, by the way. Hopefully you get that. But I would describe myself as a perpetual rabble rouser. I can't sit still or be silent, and just allow things to happen. I'm constantly kind of stirring the pot. But with that being said, I'm not just a peaceful person, I'm a peace enthusiast. Peace is what we want. It's not just a buzzword. It's not a trope. It's not a Halloween costume. Peace is real, and we have to make it. And as more specifically, we have to plan for it. I'm also a mom. I have 4 kids, and I want to be a good example for them. And I want to give them the tools to make the world better than they found it. I'm a wife. I've been married to my wonderful husband, Ben, for 16 years. Oh gosh, don't let him know I forgot that. I am a nurse. That's where I also get a lot of my passion and fire for helping people. And I'm an Aquarius, in case anyone was interested, and I use she, her pronouns. So this is part 1 of a 5-part series. Today's topic is creating a lasting message. Part 2, and you can see I don't necessarily need to go through. We're going to be doing I'm going to be doing these every Sunday for the next 5 Sundays, just to get it out there. I really just want to put this information out there. I want people to be able to use it. We're going to have to be doing a lot of healing. We have so much that is hurt, and that is not going well, that we really do need. We need to be able to heal. So I'd like to be able to give you those tools. And so join me when you're able to. These are recorded. I will share them again later. I will try to keep them short, but I'm also long-winded. And so I will try to do my best and practice what I preach about messaging. So that is our first topic. This week is part 1, creating a lasting message. Right? So what do I mean by creating a lasting message? So I want you to think about this scenario, and how many times have you come across it, or has it been a sort of a joke, but then it becomes all too real, so you think of a leader leading a crowd in a rally, and they're putting out their ask, sort of call and response. They're calling, and there's a response, and it's enough to generate attention. So the leader says, "What do we want?" And the crowd says, "To be heard." And then finally you get someone's attention. So they're like, "Okay, we're listening. What do you want?" "To be heard." "Okay." "What's your message?" "We want to be heard." And I have from Parks and Rec here, an example of the male and proud, like we're men, and and then of course Leslie says, men's rights is, nothing, and you're being ridiculous. So this is obviously sort of a parody of that, but a lot of times when we are reacting to something and all we're doing is feeling raw emotion, we don't necessarily have a coherent message or strategy or anything. And it's just, it is a reaction. And so part of what I want to do with this series as well is to give you the tools to make a better message for the next time, and there will be a next time, for the next time that you are either organizing or part of organizing or attending something. So creating a lasting message, in my mind. And again, this is my opinion. This is from my experience, from my point of view. But in my mind, what creates a lasting message is essentially kind of 4 components. So you figure out what you want, right? What is it that you actually want to accomplish? And you need to know what it is that you want, not what you don't want, not what you're tired of. What do you want, right? Then you need to tell people what you want. Again, not what you don't want, and not what is, the bad thing necessarily. It's a lot more effective and lasting when you tell people what you want. And then have that response ready. Part of messaging is teaching that messaging to everyone who is under you. If you're the leader, lead them. And part of being a leader is educating the people who are following you as to what it is that we want. So when you do that call and response, it can be a lot more cohesive, and you can start to build a mantra and that people will remember. And the reason I say tell people what you want is that the key essentially is to make it really easy to say yes to what you want and really hard to say no. It's a very, sociological kind of an approach to say, people want, if you make something easy to say yes to and hard to say no to, you're going to get a lot more people on your side willing to give you what you want. So creating a lasting message has some very, very concrete things that it needs to have, right? So every time you're out doing an action, every time you're doing something and you're putting your effort out there, you're calling people to come with you, you're asking people to show up, it should all be done around a clear and consistent message. And anyone who is watching this on TV, seeing it on Twitter, YouTube, or Facebook, they should be able to describe what you're doing in one sentence, right? Tell people what you want them to do as well. Like this, the picture we have up is a really good example. So voting is a human right. Yeah, that's really easy to say yes to, really hard to say no to, right? Stand for freedom, little ableist, but they're telling you what you want. Join the fight. Okay, like that's real simple. This is about voting. I don't even know where or when it's from, but it's voting. I can come away with that. We have to keep literacy in mind. Messaging is not the place for subtle nuance and context. We will get to that later. But your message needs to be exactly what you want to say or write or chant. If you have to explain it, it's gone, it's lost. You've lost your message. If it's not simple enough to understand that a fifth grader could understand it, and that's where we are. Fifth grade reading level is the average literacy level of our fellow Americans, right? So a fifth grader should be able to understand what you want and easily repeat that message. If you make it any more complex than that, you're going to lose people and your message is going to be lost. So here's some examples. I would ask, what does this group want? When I search up a picture that says, protest, here's what they want. What do they want? It's unclear. They want something to stop. They're calling someone a racist. It looked it up. It was, the person named, I think it was, I don't want to say it wrong, so I'm gonna stop myself right there. It was Ray Kelly. That's who it was. So they were, they're saying someone's racist. They're saying stop and frisk doesn't work. And behind, this gentleman's head, there's a sign that says justice. So we kind of get like a vague idea that like maybe there's somebody that they don't like that's racist and they want to stop him and they want justice for something. So it's a little unclear. I get the feeling that this was likely a local protest and maybe it made sense at that time. And maybe it achieved its goal, but I'm not sure because I don't know what the goal was. And, maybe this was a hyper local protest and it was just meant for that time. And that's okay. If you're doing a direct action that is just, directed at one thing that is super local, that is very easy for anybody in that vicinity to understand because they're tuned in as well. It doesn't have to be for an audience for the whole world, but if you're wanting to make a bigger impact than a local issue, then these kind of vague signs wouldn't really kind of stand the test of time, and that's another thing we're going to talk about. So here's another example. What does this group want? Well, this is a pretty common sight, right? So the first thing I'm guessing they want is to show the numerous abortion restrictions placed on women and pregnant people over the years, to show that sort of pile on one after the other of these abortion restrictions. And then two, to draw similarities to The Handmaid's Tale, which has become a very famous, obviously it was a famous book by Margaret Atwood, and then it became a Hulu series. And You know, so it's a recognizable comparison. It's very recognizable. It conveys a message silently. When we talk about methods, not madness, we will talk about contrast and we will talk about opposite tactics. So, you know, having a silent protest can be very powerful. And I have seen, you know, this has been replicated across the US, but unfortunately, I have not seen any lasting changes done to undoing all the laws that are in this picture, right? So, you know, has it had a lasting impact? Maybe to further the conversation. But really, this I think has kind of reached its saturation level. No one is moved by this imagery anymore, at least not in my opinion. So what does this group want? These three sitting at the counter. It's fairly obvious. They want to eat lunch without being harassed. Right? Lasting impact, profound. A profound lasting impact on this. Scenes like this were very common during the civil rights movement and created those lasting changes because their ask was simple. They want to eat lunch with their friends. They want to eat lunch, you know, wherever they want to be able to go to eat lunch together, right? Saying we want to eat lunch is a really easy ask. It's easy to say yes, it's hard to say no, right? And the absurdity of not getting that really basic request is what wakes people up. So when you've put forward a very reasonable request, and not only do you not get that request, but then you are brutalized for it, that you are attacked for wanting something very simple and very universal, it doesn't bode well for history, right? You look like you're the horrible racist mob attacking these people just trying to eat their lunch, right? That stands the test of time. So here's some examples of lasting messages. So, si se puede, I'm sorry if I'm mispronouncing that. It loosely translates to yes, it can be done, or yes, we can. And that has worked at other times. We're going to talk about that too. So it was used by the United Farm Workers, co-founded by Cesar Chavez and Dolores Huerta during the United Farm Workers strikes in the early 70s. And it was a very empowering message. You know, we can do it. It can be done. We're the underdogs. We're taking on, you know, the big powers that be. You know, we can have a better life. We can have fair, you know, labor practices. We can join a union. You know, this was back when all they wanted to do was just unionize, and the state of Arizona was like, you know, so it was a, you know, why did it last? And this is, you know, some of the themes I want you to start thinking about. It shared a positive collective vision for the future, right? This wasn't attacking anyone. This wasn't critiquing anyone else. This wasn't saying the Arizona legislature, governor, terrible people. Of course, you know, that's all true. It's not that they were wrong. But the message they sent was, we can do it together. Yes, we can. It can be done. That very unifying and uplifting message for the future. Okay. Here's another example. Lasting messages. I want you to time travel back with me. I'm sure all of you who are watching this remember 2008. That was a crappy time, right? We were at the end of 8 years of W. Remember that guy? No one talks about it anymore. George W. Bush. We had endured 2 terms of cronyism, false patriotism and that right-wing propaganda, 2 wars that were still raging. We had a housing crisis and a financial crash. If you haven't seen the movie The Big Short, I would highly recommend it. It's very entertaining, but very informative as well. In Michigan here, yes, our auto industry was on the brink of collapse. There was a free fall in our economy. Everyone who was getting laid off, it was very scary. And it seemed like a very low point in American history. For all of those of us who lived through it, it was a very low point. But then also remember in 2008, we had somebody come along who was young and vibrant and full of hope that we could change our country, that we could change it for the better. And it wasn't about Obama, it was about us. It was, yes, we can. Very similar sentiments to Si Se Puede, is it's shared again, or he sort of made us the underdogs with him. Everyone wants to be the underdog. Everyone loves a good underdog story, and at his rallies, he would say, when they say we can't save the auto industry, I say, yes, we can. When they say we can't get, universal health care, whatever, I think, or affordable care, I say, yes, we can, so he created this positive call and response. If anybody can't find the link, sorry, time out. I'm streaming this on Facebook and I will put it on YouTube later. So I'm just kind of doing this more as a seminar and less as an interactive Zoom. So, okay, time in. So again, we can look at Obama in this example of lasting messages, and it has that same undercurrent to it, right? That collective positive vision for the future of what could be. That is infectious. That is in a good way, right? That makes people want to be a part of something. It doesn't turn them off. And it gets them those happy brain chemicals, that idea that like something good could come of this. We could have a better life. Perfect message, 10 out of 10, would recommend. One of my favorite examples of a great lasting message is love is love. Love is easy to sell. Who doesn't love love? Love is universal. Love is really hard to argue against. And it was the perfect message because, again, if you're watching this, you have, lived in at least my same timeline where there wasn't always, and there still isn't, a total embrace of actually, you can just look at what's happening with, Secretary Buttigieg and his husband and them taking, leave with their children. It's still not totally out there, but at one point it was such a non-starter that even Obama would say, okay, I believe in civil unions, but not marriage. That word is loaded, blah, blah, blah. So, and there was always this sort of like gay rights versus church rights, and so there was this constant battle. And when this messaging came up, this idea that what love is love, like just let people love who they want. Everyone deserves love. Everyone deserves to be loved. Love, it's just love. Like it's not, we're not talking politics. We're not talking, legislation. We're just talking about love, man. Like love is love. Love is love. Love is love. So easy, so effective. And it was so memorable, right? Memorable, easy to remember, easy to repeat. Lin-Manuel Miranda put it into an acceptance speech, right? And that, again, was a really great long-term impactful messaging, right? Love is love. It's part of the lexicon now. And why did it last? Again, a shared positive collective vision for the future. It wasn't one versus the other. It was love is love. Everyone deserves love. Everyone's love looks different. It's just love. Love is love. And that, I believe that that sort of messaging is one of the reasons why we were able to have a big sea change in how we talked about marriage equality, how we talk about, I mean, obviously we are not out of the woods yet, but I do think that this is one of the best examples of amazing messaging, staying on message, and really getting to the heart of what the issue was about. So there are still some messaging that is out there that is not, I don't want to say over, or it's still ongoing efforts. And there's a million examples out there of different movements. I only have time for so many. So I really want to just kind of talk about some of the big ones that are still ongoing. So an example of a lasting message, the March for Our Lives. This has potential staying power. Because it came from paradoxically a personal yet somehow universal event, right? We have, everyone knows how many mass shootings we've had, especially in schools, starting when I was in high school and Columbine happened. Our generation has just been a generation. Okay. Oh, again, if anybody can't find this link, just if you could watch the Facebook feed, that'll be a lot easier. I will fix it for the future. Anyway, March for Our Lives. Real easy to remember. It limited a little bit because it narrowed it to a march, right? And there's more things that we can do than march, which is why they tried to go onto the road to change. They were going to get young people to register to vote, and that's really great. But it also inspires, young people who are personally affected, because the messengers, the people who are giving the message are just as important as the people, or as the message itself, right? So again, make it easy to say yes and hard to say no. This young person has a sign that says books, not bullets. Like, most rational people would say, yes, of course, we should have books in our classrooms, not bullets. Our kids should be able to, learn without fear, right? Our kids should be able to learn and be safe, So again, painting that picture of the future, especially when asked for by people who have lived through it and were robbed of those, that chance to be educated without fear, and say, I want this for everyone else. No one else should have to go through what I went through. I'm envisioning a future where our kids don't have to do lockdown drills, where, they're not afraid of, they don't just take it as a given that they could, die at school from a mass shooting. Just like they know, they're gonna have to do the SATs someday. It's just sort of this realm of possibility that wasn't there when I was in elementary school, and probably not for you either. So the message in the ask is simple. Students don't want to die at school from gun violence. That's really, really hard to say no to. And the fact that, that simple request can't be met is where we keep pushing. That is not a hard question. It's been made hard. But the more that we can just stick to the very simple ask, our students don't want to die at school. They want to be safe. Has it worked? We'll see. We have yet to see. I really hope that we don't have to kind of keep building up this, caravan of children who've gone through this to lead this movement. I hope that, we don't ever have to go through this again, but I'm also not naive enough to think that we won't. So, we will see if this messaging works. So, Black Lives Matter. I love this phrase. This has kind of stood the test of time. It is succinct, it is simple, it's easy to understand and repeat. It's a great mantra. It has run into some of the messaging pitfalls that I'm going to talk about, but it has stood the test of time. Even when it's been knocked down, it's kind of bounced back, right? And again, unfortunately, because it keeps coming up as an issue, but it's instantly recognizable. It will be remembered in history for both its impact and the context, which is rare. Same could be said for March for Our Lives. But I would, I would say this one will have a little bit more of an arc of a story. I mean, and I could be wrong. I cannot predict the future. But this message would be even stronger if we would just repeat it without equivocation, without trying to like dissect it or, doing anything. The reason it has power is because the words are perfect. We don't need to add to it, right? We just need to repeat it. So why are you doing this action today? Reporters putting a, microphone in your face? Because Black Lives Matter. Why are you shutting this down today? Because Black Lives Matter. Why are you holding this vigil? Because Black Lives Matter. Over and over and over again. And again, we'll see if it has worked. I would say it has worked in that it has made a very big and fast and profound impact on our discussion as a country about Black lives, Black bodies, really brought all of the violence and brutality that had been, covered up right out into the light. And so I do think that it has had a profound impact, and I think it will going forward. I think we have to just keep on message. Okay. I've given you a lot of examples of really good messaging. And now we're going to talk about some messaging pitfalls that I really, really encourage everyone to really think about and reframe and avoid. Please try as much as you can to avoid these pitfalls, because when you fall into them, your message is lost. So one problem, the message is too complex, misleading, or easily manipulated. So of course, the example I'm going to give you is defund the police, because if you're explaining what you mean, you're losing your message. It's gone. If it is too complex to understand outside of one sentence, one phrase, if it's, I mean, this one was repeatable, but it was not, that wasn't a boost to the movement, so it had really great intentions, but of course it was immediately twisted by the opposition. It just out of the gate, never had a chance, right? It was a very seemingly visceral, angry, reactive phrasing that was demanding a punishment. But that really doesn't actually solve the problem of police brutality. So defund the police sounds very like aggressive and punitive, like we're going to hurt you back. But that doesn't actually solve the underlying problem. It's more just vengeance. And just keep in mind, a provocative message, it will become a way to tear your message apart. And is that what you really want to achieve? Do you want to spend your time, arguing with people about why defund the police is a good idea and why it doesn't mean what you think it means, and it's this, and I've got to put out all these words to try to get you to understand what it means? I came across this sort of, what does defund the police actually mean? All of these bullet points explaining this would have been a much better slogan. because it focuses on how things should be, right? The solution is, say what you want to see instead. Paint a picture for the public when we're angry and we're reacting to something and we want something to stop and we just don't like the bad feelings that are coming up and you just don't know how to deal with it. You need to pause and you need to think, what do I want? Not what I don't want. I know what I don't want. It was whatever I just saw. That was horrible and terrifying and traumatic. And I don't want that. I know I don't want that. But what do I want? And what can I say to get people to agree with me on what I want? So, I've got a picture of this woman, saying, who is policing the police? So sometimes a question can be a great slogan, because it does bring up that idea of like, oh, my vision for the future would be one in which the police don't have free reign to just kill whoever they think is appropriate to kill according to them, that they will also be policed in a meaningful way. And really, you want to make people envision a better world, right? Like, I want to live in a world where, the police are actually protecting and serving communities, that they are, not able to just kill with, impunity, where we have more social services. So part of it was like, well, we want to take that money and we want to give it over to the, okay, then say that, say, hire social workers, hire mental health rapid response teams. We want to see X, Y, and Z. That is easier to say yes to. No one is saying yes to defunding the police. And of course, you immediately you gave the other side every bit of ammunition they needed to literally attack. and we really need to focus on what we want. So hold police accountable and qualified immunity, right? That might be a little wordy. And maybe a fifth grader wouldn't know what, qualified immunity is. So I'm breaking my own rule a little bit, but that is a better mantra. Hold police accountable than defund the police. In my opinion, if to make it so you're not self-sabotaging your movement, be very clear on what you want to see. So here's another messaging pitfall. Problem. What you're saying is confusing or vague or has some abstract meaning that just completely distracts from what you're talking about. If what you're doing and saying and asking only makes sense to you or your like small group and it's like an inside joke, no one else is going to get it, and your message is going to stay with you and it's going to die with you. This is not going to live on. For example, during the 1968 Democratic Convention in Chicago, the Yippies ran Pegasus, who was literally just a pig. I don't know where they got that poor thing. But that was their, I mean, look at all those people. Look at all those people that they could have led to do something proactive, but instead it was, oh, we're going to elect a pig. Like, okay. I come a generation after that and I have no clue what you were trying to accomplish. So not a lasting message. If it's vague, right? So one of the more disturbing things I saw during the 2016 primary election, there was an incident where Hillary Clinton was going through, or her motorcade was going through, and Bernie Sanders supporters started literally throwing money at her motorcade. And, and there's signs and things like that, but that act itself was very confusing. Like, are you trying to give her money? Are you calling her a whore, a prostitute? Are you degrading sex work? Are you saying like the act itself was just confusing, and it kind of it lent a sort of feeling of anti-Hillary sentiment, but really didn't accomplish anything concrete or make a solid point, and then really kind of made the people doing it just look sort of mean and spiteful, that this was a really insulting thing to do. It wasn't something, you know, this is not the vision of the future I want, where we're, you know, throwing money at people we disagree with politically. Also, was that real cash? I don't know, like, what a waste. It was just very it was very vague in the message it was trying to, you know, get across, and ultimately it didn't last, because I was very much paying attention to the 2016 elections, as all of you were, and I still don't quite understand what the point of that was. Oh, my hands. Okay. Or if it's really abstract. So, you know, I don't know if you've noticed, but PETA, the People for the Ethical Treatment of Animals, is an activist group, you know, that really wants to stop using animals for meat and milk and clothes, you know, leather, any of those things. And so generally they, or in the past, you know, they used to just sort of be pro-animal, but now they've made this into this odd, like sexualized, like hypersexualized protest movement, where seemingly only white women are getting naked. Not to say that, like, you know, all women should be getting naked and have more diversity. It's just, why are these women naked? And like, you know, I have this picture here that shows, you know, these two young vegan activists dressed in lettuce underwear next to their two male counterparts who are in PETA t-shirts, right? So, and everyone here is white. So it's just, where, and like, why are you blurring the lines between like animals and sex and veganism, and like, it's just very abstract and a little too unsettling, and there's just a lot going on there that's distracting from whatever their actual message is of that event. So that's definitely a pitfall, being too abstract, or like mixing metaphors and making people feel weird about it, especially if you don't have a specific ask. Yeah. So the messaging solution, again, it should make sense to everyone. 5th grade reading level, please remember literacy. Okay, if people cannot understand really easily, they're not going to remember, and they're not going to pass it on. And that's what you want. That's how you want to build a lasting message. And it needs to stand the test of time. So I have a picture here of, you know, people protesting or in support of the Equal Rights Amendment of yesteryear, and then a contemporary one. Same messaging, same, you know, sort of constituency, right? But just new updated signs and glossier pictures, you know, one's black and white and one's in color. So unfortunately, you know, the ERA was not a huge success, but this messaging and this movement stood the test of time for a couple of generations. And make sure you know what emotion you're going for and cater your protest to this. So, you know, the idea of the Equal Rights Amendment was, you know, what emotion are you going for? You're trying to, you know, evoke women's anger and outrage the fact that they're not full legal citizens, right? And so that's the feeling you want. You didn't mess it up with weird hypersexual stuff or you know, weird gestures. You kept it real simple. We want this specific legislation passed. We're outraged that it isn't already in law. And avoid minimizing your message with foolishness. Mockery is a great tool, and we will talk about that. But if you jump into something, especially if you're leading something and you look unprepared or unfocused, or you just look amateurish, or not even if you look unsure of what it is you're asking people, no one's going to hear you. You need to be very clear. Huge messaging pitfall is making it all about you. So I've got examples here of this horrible Pepsi ad, you know, that was like selling pop, you know, on the heels of Black Lives Matter protests. We've got Jane Fonda, of course, during the Vietnam War. And then this lovely person from this past year saying, I want a haircut, When you make it all about you, and not the message itself, you do damage to your message because you are the focus and not what the message is. A person has faults, they have pasts, they have motivation, they are not the message. And if a message is inextricably linked to a person, and that person is fallible as all people are, then as goes that person, so goes the message. If it's not passed on and made more sort of universal. And just remember, no one cares about you more than you do. And this won't change hearts and minds. Like, the people showing up at the Capitol saying, I want a haircut, I need a haircut, I need seeds, I need paint. Like, while a global pandemic was going on, didn't really change a lot of hearts and minds. It just made you go like, are you aware of what's going on right now? Like, we don't care about your roots. Like, there's bigger things going on. So when you make it about personal requests, or it's all about you and you're the spokesperson for it, you don't really then care about the message. So the messaging solution is always we and not me, right? I know that's something that Bernie Sanders said a lot, but it's very true. This needs to be about a collective, people. And it needs to focus on the future and not the present. And I'm going to say this right now to every single person who is a leader of any kind of movement, any kind of group, you need to check your ego at the door, okay? Because this is never just about you. It's never about me. It's never about a single solitary person. It is bigger. If you somehow become a distraction to the message, if you are hurting your message and therefore your movement, you need to bow out. All right. If you are not the best messenger for that, a white savior kind of urges complex, if you're not the best messenger for that, you need to step up by stepping back and supporting someone who is the appropriate messenger for that. Keep your eyes on the prize, even if you don't get your turn, right? If we look at all of this, if we look at social change as a team sport, you gotta play your part. You gotta give it all your all, even if you never get a turn to bat, even if you never get a turn to do the thing. If you really care about it, you're gonna keep your eye on the prize. If you can't do those things to further your message and further your movement, you need to really evaluate why you're in the movement and why you're leading this movement. Is it just about you, or is it about what you claim to care about? You need to have tough conversations with yourself and really figure out if you're not the best messenger, who is, and if you're hurting the cause, how do you get out? Or how do you support in another way that isn't a distraction? So, got some examples here. I'm just going to close with a couple of these great examples. I've got a picture from Hamilton. One of the best examples of this was Washington, leading by example, saying, I'm not going to be a forever king president. I'm going to totally break with this system. I'm going to take all this power I have and I'm going to peacefully transfer it based on this system of government we've just created. I know I could, but I'm looking toward the future, not the present. I'm looking at the whole country, not just the me and my power. That's extraordinary. That is real power and real leadership, to be able to self-sacrifice your personal ambition to get where you want to go, or to get us where we want to go. Heartbreaking example, but also really endearing example. Hillary Clinton, I love you. If you've ever seen this, you know, you're going to know exactly. I don't know why you'd ever watch this, but having to swallow every feeling of, you know, just disappointment and anger and just everything to graciously step aside and acknowledge defeat and then continue to champion the things that you care about. You know, that's incredible. And then for some more Parks and Rec comic relief, you know, what does Leslie love more than Ben? Waffles, and waffles specifically from JJ's Diner. And what does Ron love? He'll never tell you because he's very private, except for like breakfast food and Lagavulin and steaks and things like that. But they're an unlikely pair to ever see at a protest. And everyone has heard Leslie's opinion on waffles. She knows she's kind of reached her saturation level, and she convinces and gets Ron to also join her and say, you know, she literally passes the mic to him, that maybe if Ron Swanson got behind something like JJ's Diner, that they could potentially change some more hearts and minds, right? And again, that's fiction. I know I'm not anyway. So we are just a little bit over the hour mark. I'm going to try to keep these to an hour or less because it's hard to sit and watch anybody talk about anything for that long a time. So just in summary, your message is all you have. That's it. It needs to be simple. It needs to be easy to remember, and it needs to be easily repeatable. Otherwise, everything you do is for nothing. It just is a pastime or a hobby. It's not going to make lasting, impactful change. We are living in such grim times. We need to start painting pictures of what we want our future to look like. If people listened to you, if people followed you, if people did what you said, how would their lives be better? Ask yourself that. You know, what would be better? What better future could they imagine for themselves? How are their lives going to be better? And I want to work toward a better that. I don't want to just react to bad things and just always be, you know, trying to deal with the shock and awe we've all been dealing with, you know, seemingly the last 5 years or so. We need to start thinking about, what do we want to see? Avoid the messaging pitfalls as much as possible, please. And please keep in mind that the messenger is just as important as the message. I'm saying this to my like white, straight, allied friends. You are not the best messenger for every message. Please make sure when you're putting on an effort that you are the best messenger. If you're not, find a better messenger. And again, if you can't, and you can't check your ego at the door, you got to really ask yourself, do you really believe in the things you're saying? Or is this a vanity project? So I'm going to leave you with that. You can join me again next Sunday. End the slideshow. And we're going to talk next Sunday about visual contrasts. Now that we know what message we want, we're going to use visual contrast to make our message crystal clear and draw a comparison between us and whoever our opposition is. So I want to thank everybody for joining me, and I will see you next Sunday. Please have a peaceful week.